Today's experiment is my first attempt at culturing up yeast from commercially packaged beer. Why would you want to do that? Good question. You wouldn't need to most of the time since we can get so many great yeast strains. However, there occasionally is an opportunity to get a yeast strain that is not easily available. And that's this case. There is a brewery in Vermont called Alchemist, I think, and they make this beer called Heady Topper, which is a very good double IPA, and they use a yeast strain that they call Conan. So I'm going to try to get it going, and got some supplies here. We'll be going over all this. First thing I'm going to do is get this 200 milliliters of water, bring it to a boil. I'm going to weigh out some DME and get it boiling, and I'll take you through it. Like I said, I've never done this. I've read about it, watched a YouTube video or so, and going to give it a shot, and hopefully I'll have success. See what happens. To make a yeast starter, you want a low gravity wort, normally 1030 to 1040. To make a yeast starter for a beer that you're trying to get the yeast out of a can or a bottle, which has been strained, it's been stressed, it's been in an alcoholic environment, all this stuff, you don't know the health of it, you don't know how old it is, you want an even lower gravity. So you want, say, 1020-ish. Oh, this thing just went off. So for let's see, for 1030 to 1040, I read you want 10 grams of DME per 100 milliliters. Oh, this isn't going to work now because it teared out. So what I'm doing is, instead of 10 grams for 100 milliliters, I'm doing 10 grams for 200 milliliters, so about half the density. Now, what I might do, I mean, if you look at this, it's, you know, it's more than a tablespoon. This is actually 11 grams. I had a hard time getting it right at 10. But I'd say it's a little more than a tablespoon. But if you're going to do this, you probably do want a refractometer to kind of, you know, just make sure the gravity you get is right. I'm going to check it out here in a minute. The water's already boiling because there's not much water, so it just starts boiling instantly. I'm going to turn that off, stir in the DME. What I was trying to say is I'm doing 200 milliliters of water. I'm going to do 10 grams of DME, which, like I said, looks like a tablespoon and a half, maybe. I will check the gravity at the refractometer after it boils for a while, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I put the DME in. I took a refractometer reading. Comes in right now at 6. So 6 bricks. So multiply that by 4. That's 1024. I'm aiming for, you know, around 1020. 1020 to 1030. What I might do is I might just throw in like a couple more tablespoons of water to dilute that a little bit. I did pour the DME into a tablespoon measurement. It was approximately 1.5 tablespoons if you just want to try, you know, ballparking that for yourself. I do have a scale, so I weighed it. I think I used 11 grams. So yeah, 10 grams would be a little bit closer to 1020. Going to be boiling it for 10 minutes. And cooling it down and going from there. So this is my boil, just a kind of a simmering boil, definitely boiling. I can tell the wort looks a lot lighter than usual. And I'm just going to do it for 10 minutes. I suppose I'll just note this quick too. I've seen videos where guys boil the stuff, and that's probably cool. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to sanitize it my normal way and hope for the best. I do have a lid here. But I'll show you that stuff in a bit, and yeah, here we go. Alright, just a quick update. I did add a little more water, like I said I might. Been boiling it for almost 10 minutes. I checked the gravity again, and then it was up to 7, because I must have evaporated off that much water. When you're dealing with this small volume, it must make a factor. So then, it must be a factor. So then I added a little bit more water, a couple more tablespoons. I'm going to take another gravity reading. I guess the point is, I've been told you want the gravity to be low. You don't want to have it to be too high. You just want the yeast to be in a real easy environment to start trying to grow. So you might want to borrow or get a refractometer if you're going to try this, just so you can kind of check it out and make sure that you're around that 1020 mark. Okay, I'm doing a little ice bath. I don't expect this to take too long. There's really not much wort in there. I am sanitizing a thermometer probe, also a spoon. So I can just kind of stir it around here. This is what I do really anyway for doing starters. So yeah, I'm going to cool it down, take the thermometer temperature, and go from there. Okay, it is cool now. I sanitized this Pyrex thing because I was kind of curious about the measurement of how much I got. So I poured it in there and I got about just under 200. And so after I started with 200, I probably added about 6 tablespoons of water. So, you know, that's about how much I boiled off. Now we're going to get it into this pint jar and get the yeast in there. I'm going to pour it into this jar. This jar has been sanitized. So it's a little bit under 200 milliliters. I took another Brix reading. It was still up around 6.5. So, you know, a little over 1020. This is a sanitized lid. I suppose I could sanitize my hand and cover. That's what I would do sometimes with the growlers, but right now I'm just going to aerate. I'm not going to have this on a stir plate, so I'm just going to give it a good shake right now. Initially. And then we'll get to the fun stuff. So, that's all sanitized. Now, if you ever get a chance to get this beer, definitely recommend it. It is one of the best double IPAs I've had. Now, this is the trick, is to figure out, you want to pour out enough of the beer, but you don't want to pour out the yeast, so I'm just going to kind of guess. I don't know how much I got in there. You know, I got more in there than I need to, actually. Maybe I'll pour more out in the next one. Definitely got the yeast in there, though. So, there goes that one. Maybe I'll pour a little bit more out of the next one. Maybe I'll try to tip that up next time. This one here, I'm going to try to cap this. Maybe drink it tomorrow. It's such a nice beer. I'm not going to want to drink 2 of them tonight if I can spread the love around a little bit. Alright. Well, I'm not sure how I did on this one either. Maybe. Well, I'm definitely not failing to get the yeast in there, but I probably am pouring more in than I need to, but I guess I would think you'd rather be safe than sorry on that. I don't know. I don't know if having too much beer in there is a problem. I guess it's bringing the gravity down, I suppose. Boy, that's really pretty full. Oh, the carbonation is coming out. So, I'm going to let this sit for a sec, and I'll put the cap on there and then wrap it up with my final thoughts. So, now you definitely do not want to tighten this down. So, that's all the way closed. I'm going to back it off. You know, you can see it's coming up, maybe just like that. It's not airtight. You could use foil, I think. I don't know. Yeah, I think you can see all the suspended particles. Now, this beer is known to have a lot of I think they refer to them as hop resins, but I mean, I don't know if that's what it is. It's residual hops, I suppose, but it's also going to be the yeast. And you know, even in just the short amount of time here, I can already see it settling here, and I think you can too. So I'm going to put this somewhere, room temperature. I'll be checking on it. I'll be doing video updates. If I do get some activity going and I see some yeast happening, eventually I'll probably be stepping this up into a larger jar with more low gravity wort before I would eventually pitch it into a normal starter. That's my plan, and we'll see if I get any activity out of it. I skipped a step that I was going to do. I was going to apply some flame to around the can where the beer would be coming out. I've seen that done. Doesn't matter now. I'm not too worried about it, but I was gonna do it. So if you're gonna try this, you might try that too. I've seen people do that on glass. I don't know why you couldn't do it on aluminum, if that's what you're working from. So just thought I would throw that in there, and onward. Want to do a quick update here. It is now Thursday morning, and I did this on Saturday night, and I was starting to think that it wasn't actually going to take off. But I read somebody's page on doing the same thing, maybe I'll link it, and he said that it can take 4 days to get going, and so now it's been 4.5 days, and I'm noticing I am getting this release of CO2 and a little, head build up, little Croissant build up hopefully. And also, I'm not really sure about this, but maybe the slightest bit of a very thin fingernail of yeast layer above the tube, which if this is working will get more defined. So maybe, just maybe, this is working, and I'll continue to keep an eye on it, and hopefully I'll be able to step it up to a larger size if it is working. Okay, so now it's 24 hours later. I should have done a video last night because actually you could see bubbles rising up throughout the starter here, and there was many more bubbles up here. So it was definitely actively going. Now looking at it, I'm thinking maybe it's actually mostly done fermenting out the amount of DME that I use. So it has now been, what, 5.5 days? What did I say yesterday? Let's see, Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. 5 days. Anyway, it took about 5 days for mine to really get going. So I'll probably, if I have time tonight, I might put this is a pint, I might put this all into a quart jar and add another, 200 milliliters of DME and see if it'll get going again. So yeah, it seems to be done, fermented out now, but it was fermenting last night. I just didn't do a video. Okay, it's warmer now in the afternoon, and you can see that bubbles are going up. Kind of turned it so that's why there's more suspended stuff, but you can see that, there are bubbles going up and there's bubbles on the top. But I think it's ready to be stepped up. Okay, real quick what I'm doing here, I got about 400 milliliters of water is what I started with. Ended up being about 3 tablespoons of DME to get it to about 10, 28, 10, 30 range. Sanitizing a 1 quart jar, sanitizing the thermometer, I'll sanitize the spoon, and I'm gonna pour that guy into the jar and the new wort, and hopefully it'll ferment. Okay, so I started with about 400 milliliters. You can see I ended with about 300. I've got, I don't know, maybe 500 in here about. So I sanitize this lid, and I have it on tight, and I'm gonna shake it right now, and then I'm gonna take it off and this thing, get it all swirled up and dump it in. Okay, 650 milliliters maybe. So 300, so I had about 350 milliliters in the pint jar instead of 500. Anyway, I shook it up very well and dumped everything all together with the sanitized funnel. What else I was going to say? The final gravity of the wort I just added was about 1040, which got a little bit higher than I had intended, but that's still within the realm of okay for yeast that at least has been able to grow up a little bit. I think if you were starting right from the cans or a bottle, you would want to have a lower gravity. I will keep an eye on this and do a couple more updates, and hopefully this stuff will get going. Okay, this is the day after I added it all together in this quart jar. You can see I have yeast going on top. It's developing here on the bottom too. And you probably can't see, this thing doesn't focus once I start it, but there are, yeah, you can kind of see bubbles rising there. Sure. So it is working. So the next step after this will probably be to let it all settle to the bottom in the fridge for a few days, and then decant off a lot of this wort, and then add it to a big amount of fresh wort on a stir plate. This has been in the fridge for 2 days. If I had more time, I might have had it even longer, so just any sort of yeast that would be in here could just really get down to the bottom. And so this was, what, 650 milliliters. What I'm going to do is dump off half of this at least. So I have about 300 milliliters. Most of the stuff is all on the bottom, but there might be still some suspended in here. And I put about 800 milliliters of water, and that'll be that starter. So then by the time this is done, I'll have around a liter starter. And I'm going to put it on my stir plate for a couple of days, and I'm going to brew in 2 days, and then I'll probably just pitch the entire starter at that time. Here it is, about a liter. Gonna get rolling here. Got a Anchor Steam, since it's, well, I think it's American Craft Beer Week. Oh, time to feed the cat. A quick shot of this. It's been 24 hours now since I made this, and it did get to be a nice sort of yeasty, milky color, which is good. And it also does have some croissant-y bubbles that have been on the top. So I am hoping for the best. I will be pitching it tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. Alright, moment of truth. I have 5 gallons of New Albion Ale, single malt and single hop beer brewed. That was 1056. Just 2-row pale malt and Cascade hops. But the difference that I am throwing into it is using this Conan yeast. So it's all aerated, chilled. Just gonna dump this whole thing in here, which, you know, I usually kind of do. Sometimes I'll decant. Let me give it a quick smell. Definitely smells yeasty. Alright. There goes nothing. I'll probably do a quick report in the next 24 hours. Hopefully it'll be fermenting by then. Otherwise I'll wrap up this video, and then down the road I might do a tasting video, but hopefully this will have worked. It's my first time doing it, and catch you later, except for the quick update. Here we are 20 hours after pitching. I'm just getting up. It is going, so it is 66 degrees. It worked, I think. One other quick final note, and then I'll get this video up today. Bloop. Is when I was growing up this yeast, it was only about 65 degrees or so in my house. And if it was warmer, 70, 75, it probably would not have taken that many days. I'll do a taste testing on this beer, more from the point of view of, do I get any Heady Topper flavor in this really basic pale ale that comes from the yeast. But as far as growing up the yeast, it seems to have worked, so happy about that. See you later.